Hey everyone, welcome to the show, episode 35, the history of the centre bounce. So today we're going to talk about the history, how it was created, what they did before, and also leading up to today's changes with the rule changes of 2026. So let's start with the creation. The centre bounce in Australian rules football started in 1887. When it became a mandatory way to restart the play at the beginning of each quarter, with the rule later extended to restarts after each goal had been kicked in 1891. So it was a core tradition of the game. Dating back to the VFA days, right at the start of football almost, and it's had a rich history up until the rule changes of today. So we'll now also talk about why they made the rule. So before they actually made the centre bounce a format into the game, they used to do a throw up. And that was a key element before they came in and introduced this centre bounce. So I'm going to talk about why they actually made the centre bounce. So let's get started. So the centre bounce was introduced into Australian rules football to provide a more controlled and fair way to restart play. Before the bounce, the ball was often thrown up or rolled, leading to disputes and controversies. The bounce helped reduce these issues and create a more consistent way to start each quarter and restart play after goals had been kicked. This innovation contributed to the game's development and structure. So just briefly on that, obviously our game was created in Australia. We all had to make our own game, and we sort of had a blend of rules that were obviously rugby and soccer type games. So that's where they originally before they threw it up, they did a rolled, which was, in between scrimmages, like I guess what you'd see like in rugby. So we developed from that. We developed into a throw-up, which gave the creations of the two ruckmen going against each other instead of going against each other as it's been rolled along the floor. So that was the creation and how it started. But also the introduction of the centre bounce also helped promote more structure and play and reduce the number of scrimmages and contests of the ball, as I mentioned. By having the umpire bounce the ball, it gave both teams a clear indication of when play was about to restart, allowing them to position themselves and contest the centre bounce. In a more orderly fashion, this change contributed to the game's pace and physicality, shaping the sport into what we know today. The centre bounce also became an iconic part of Australian rules football, with the two ruckmen playing a crucial role at contesting the bounce. The skill and physicality required to win the centre bounce have made it a key aspect of the game, often influencing the outcome of matches. Over time, teams have developed various strategies and tactics to gain advantages at the centre bounce, adding complexity and depth to the game. So, it was created to make the game better and also indicate to players when play was about to begin. With the umpire coming in, the umpire comes in and he bounces it like so. He'll come in, bounce it down, and the ball will go up above, and you have the two ruckmen that are playing against each other that will run and contest for that bit of play. The centre, there was only a tiny centre circle at the time, so you could run up. Your run up could be as long as you wanted at the time. As rules changed, the AFL introduced like the 10-metre circle, so you had room each side, but you had to be inside the center circle. And so that's the creation of it and the reasoning why. It structured the game more. It gave the official time for players to understand and know and have the knowledge to contest the ruck. And that being said, they wanted to give both teams a clear indication and also position themselves for the contest. Sort of evolved from being rolled into a throw up, into a bounce. And they knew then it wasn't about time management for them then. It was about having structure of play. So to me, it's a traditional part of the game. And I will get into how the rule changes are being implemented in 2026 now. So we'll talk about that and we'll give the opinion of those rule changes after so. So the AFL Commission has approved 2 changes of law. The AFL regulations, which will see the discontinuation of the centre bounce and the removal of the substitute for the 2026 Premiership season. So these are the 2 big rule changes they've made. And we're going to talk about the centre bounce, obviously, being the podcast about the history of the centre bounce. So the decision to remove the centre bounce was made after careful consideration of several factors, including umpire health and safety, creating a consistency across all competitions and expanding and diversifying the elite umpire pathways and reducing the overall match length. The AFL Executive General Manager of Football Performance, Greg Swan, said the removal of the centre bounce will bring a number of benefits to the game. The centre bounce has been a long part of the Australian football tradition, as I mentioned. I'm not sure how many people briefly know how long this has been part of the game. The people that may be writing and changing the rules currently, I would like them to actually know that when it was created and the proud history of it. And that's why we're doing this podcast. But as the game evolved, there are several areas which will benefit and allowing the umpires to simply throw the ball up at the restart. Currently, the umpire pathways are being narrowed by the recruitment of the bounce, and it is a difficult skill to execute. And we believe it is preventing some of our best umpiring prospects from progressing any further in the AFL pathways, despite having elite decision-making skills. By removing this skill and aspect of the bounce, the umpires can focus their energy on adjudicating the game and the consistency of their decision-making. We also anticipate the decision will be safer for the umpires and players at the contest and lessen the likelihood of umpire contact at the restart of play with the players. The removal of the bounce, we predict, will also have a positive impact on the reduction of the game length, or it takes, I'm just going to stop that one there. It takes 2 seconds to grab the ball back from one of the midfielders and restart the bounce. So I don't think that is going to have any effect on game time at all. Zero, zilch. 1 second is not going to make a difference in a game for them to win a game. Zero. That's, to me, zero. And also produce a cleaner and fairer ruck contest. 2 areas we have been monitoring for the past 2 seasons. Additionally, it will also create consistency across the national competitions. He's also, so he's been listening to the clubs and the AFPA, and any additional changes of the law of the game will be communicated following the October Commission's meeting. So obviously that's been a decision that's been brought through, and we'll just touch base on those decisions from the podcast perspective. I personally like the centre bounce. I was a ruckman. I think most ruckmans don't get enough acknowledgement in football, and it's a great physicality and the ability to showcase strength in the centre. And I think umpires who couldn't bounce the ball, I don't think it was a skill to have, much like a player has to bounce the football during a game. That there is a required skill for them to have. I don't think the umpires should be put in a special category either. I think they should have the decisions and the elite skill to be at the highest level of football. Because if you can't be at the highest level of football, if you're a football player, you're just not in the AFL. It's as simple as that. And umpires that couldn't bounce, I just don't think from being a professional, I just don't think if you're not good enough, you're just not good enough. It's not criticizing them. It's just setting a standard to play. I get that they're changing it now and they're trying to introduce more umpires into the game. And it's not a knock on the umpires. It's just it's a required skill. It's not a knock on a player that can't play at the high level. So to me it's about having the highest standard of footballers and also umpires. So that's my view on that one. But also, I get the umpire contact with players. It's obviously not good. You don't want people to run into each other. Is it a contact sport? It unfortunately happens. I don't think people want it to happen. I don't think the umpires want it to happen. I don't think the players intentionally go to accidentally hit an umpire. I think that the last thing they want to do is clean up an umpire during a game. And it's still going to happen. The players are not looking where the umpire is all the time. If anything, the bounce actually made players look where the umpire is better. You want my actual opinion on that one? The umpire would bounce the ball with his head over the ball and he's in the middle of everything, right? All the players know that. The original reason why they did this rule is because the players' positioning. They knew. They made this rule change back in the 1800s for a reason, because it was better for players' positioning. And what I mean by that is they could see where... To me, it was about how they could see the umpires more. So I think throwing it up now, the players, their eye levels are going to be different. Their eye levels aren't going to be seeing the umpire sort of... he's standing up and he bounces the ball down like that. And then he comes back up and he runs back out. That's how it's happened for over 100 years. So, players, there's a few midfielders, obviously. You've got the ruckman in the middle. They're generally not going to contact the umpire. That's not going to happen. Generally, it's the midfielders running in like that. That being said, now they know it's just going to be thrown up. Their eye line is going to be up. It's going to be up a lot more. And they're going to hit that contest harder. There's not going to be that time for it to sort of bounce up in the air and you got to read it and judge. It's just going to be a straight throw up. Their eye line is going to be up and they're going to be hitting that hard. There's no doubt about that. They're going to read the taps better. There's no more unpredictability in the game. So I'd hope that they maybe think and see. Unfortunately, when people make these decisions, whether it's Greg Swan who's made it or other people that are above him, who think just these fancy ways of changing things, the AFL have got a history of just making changes of rules, and it's a knee-jerk reaction most times. From my opinion, in the last 15 to 10 years. There's been so many rule changes, you can't keep up with it. They almost do a rule change every year. I would love to see a fan survey, a legitimate fan survey, audited by all the members, whether they like these rule changes or not. I'm not talking just this year, I'm talking over the last 10 years. I can guarantee it will come back that most fans do not want any more rule changes, and they don't want to hear about it. It's almost becoming a game where it's not football. And I want to stick back to the safety of the umpires. I think it's going to be determined to see how this works. I actually think the eye line's not going to be where you're forced to look and see where the umpire's bouncing, and you're looking where the ball is. If you know where it's going to be, you're just going to run straight to that area. And you're not actually, the umpire's just going to run out. And I actually hope that they end up being safe and it doesn't have any collisions, and someone doesn't. I don't want to see an umpire get hurt. That's the last thing. But it just did make me think on the fly right there and then, because you have to have time to bounce it and bounce it up. So I'd love to see what do you think, people, of that. Do you like the rule change? Do you not like it? I know some people and ah when an umpire gets the bounce wrong and he's got to recall it. And have we lost the attention? Have we lost the ability to have attention these days? It takes 1 second to call the ball back. Like we're not a goldfish anymore, people. We have brains, we can think. I know social media's made stuff where you just click into stuff and you want the now, and the modern world is fast food and get it now, get it done. I get that whole jazz. That's a good thing. Sometimes innovation, well, we have things faster, we do stuff faster, but is it going to impact the game? Is it going to impact game time? No, simply not. There's so many other things they could do to speed up the game. Does the game actually need to be sped up any more than it already is? Probably not. They do all these rule changes, and I don't want it to be a negative podcast, because really I'm trying to just say it like it is. I generally like to have a positive impact on this podcast, and I like the bounce, and I like the tradition of it, and I think it's not honouring the ruckman as they should. Also, the other rule changes with the last touch and stuff like that is going to limit the amount of boundary throw-ins that we have, so also impacting the ruckman. And I like seeing two big blokes go out the ball. I know it's probably not something everyone likes, but that's just part of the game, and it should be a celebrated part of the game. I just don't think those decisions are in the best interest of protecting the game. Yes, it goes back to the actual traditional rule before the bounce. And as I've learnt that, it's probably made me accept the rule change more. And it's not something that I'm really upset by. I just liked the actual bounce. Like, you'd have two ruckmen coming in, and they've got like their that's your jumping foot, and they've got their knee to protect themselves. So they're coming into each other like that. That's how it's always been. Now they're making it so you have to jump more. You can't just run in and push your player over the line. You have to make the attempt to sort of jump or initiate contact before you'd get over the line. And I'm okay with that. I think so. They've done some good, but also scrapped a rule that has been around for a long time, and what players have been used to, and what ruckmans have done their whole junior career and practiced and practiced and practiced and practiced to get it right. I mean, you had third man up. They got rid of that. We had all these changes to the ruck over the years, and I don't want to see the ruck spot diminished. We will see it diminished in 2026. We're going to see less boundary throw-ins. Some people probably don't like it, probably doesn't really bother them, but it's a tradition of the game. And there's going to be a point where they just keep changing so many rules. There's already people that are older that don't even watch football because the rules have changed that much. I'm all for safety. I'm all for more regulation if it makes more safe to players. But also, at the end of the day, we know it's a contact sport. But we have to accept that these are the rule changes, and that's just how it is. And that is the history. That is also a few things that I personally felt about it. And also what the ruck meant to me throughout my career. When I was younger, I played at Port Adelaide. I got the ability to, be in Port Adelaide's academy, one of the first academies set up, and play alongside players like Scott Lycett. And the team that we had there, we got to work with a few of the old Port boys. And also when they actually still had AFL players playing in the SANFL with other teams. So I had Ivan Marek. He used to come down. His team was the Port Magpies, ironically, but he was a Crows player. So they were split into different teams, and that was the team he was allocated. And yeah, me and Scott were lucky enough that we actually got to learn from him. An AFL quality ruckman used to come down and teach us how to ruck, and we learnt a lot. And we were the top team for a while there. So we were the best ruck craft in our grade for our age. And these are things we learnt. You'd jump up into the ruck bag and you'd learn to tap. Generally they'd throw it up as you're training, but it also you've got to try to learn to do the bounce. And the bounce was a good art because you've got to change how you adapt and move once it's bounced. So yes, sometimes the bounce can be unfair and go one way or the other. But generally that's life. Life's sometimes not fair. And that's just a good teaching of values within that. So, but I will, on a positive side, if it has an impact and saves umpires from having umpire contact, okay, that's good. I don't want it to go the other way where a player just runs straight into the umpires. After reading the rule changes, how they created the bounce and why they did it, it made me think of why and how. And just, it was a way for players to know their positions better. And let's hope that, it doesn't go down that track where someone gets hurt and players can now adapt to that positioning. We'll see how it goes, and just really hope. There was a reason why they introduced a bounce years ago. I sort of explained it, and it's an interesting one. It's one that maybe not many people really like. They're not facile, it's just a bounce, but it's a traditional part to start the game. It was also a way to pump up the game when people knew, all right, the bounce is going to be at 1:30. But get ready, the bounce is ready. And it's also TV shows called The Bounce. So on Foxtel, so it's got a tradition in the game. And when it has a rich history like that, sometimes things need to be protected. But it's going to be changed. We're going to talk about a few of the other rule changes later on the podcast. We're going to add them in. Yeah, there's a lot of positive. I just wanted to give how I felt about it. Obviously, I generally care about it because I'm a ruckman, and a lot of people aren't ruckman, or whether the midfielders care or not. It's another question for another. Everyone has their own individual thought and view on it. I'm okay with the change if it stays. If it has a good impact and no one gets hurt, I'm all for it. I didn't want it to be like a negative thing. I just wanted to say how it had a rich history. We talked about the creation and everything in between. So thank you for today's podcast. I really hope you liked it. And it's not to be a knock on the AFL or anything. It's just a nice podcast to talk about it. Talk about what it meant to me as a player, a former player, and also probably what it meant to other people, and also the impact it has on ruckman and the changes to the game with less boundary throw-ins with the last touch. Should we have touched any more than that for the ruckman? We got to let them still have their craft. And let's hope that it is a reduction in ruckman injuries. We don't want to see ruckman clashing with each other because they don't have that time to slow down either. So let's just hope that this doesn't have a negative impact on the game. And it's all about positivity. Thank you, everyone. Cheers.